Hey there everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Connor and I'm that Scottish nerd that brings you Pokemon trading card game content as well as gaming videos and the occasional movie review. If any of that interests you, be sure to hit the subscribe button down below so that you can keep up to date with my future videos, as I do post multiple times a week. In this video we're having a look at some more expanded decks in the Pokemon trading card game, and today we're having a look at Durant. And if you love control decks or mill decks, any kind of annoying, really frustrating decks to play against, then this deck is going to be for you, because Durant is all about milling out your opponent. And if you don't know what that means, it means that you're looking to deck them out and discard their entire deck, because if you're unable to draw a card at the start of your turn and you have no deck remaining, that means that your opponent wins the game. That's the exact strategy that we're going for here, so it's definitely not the conventional strategy of taking all of your prize cards, and it's certainly more difficult to pull off, but we're going to be looking to try and pull it off here today. So Durant has Devour for 1 mental energy, and you get to discard the top card of your opponent's deck for each of your Durant in play. So if we have one Durant and it's just on its own, we're able to discard the top card of our opponent's deck. But since we can play 4 Durant, that means we're going to be able to discard 4 cards from the top of our opponent's deck. But of course, if this Pokemon gets knocked out, then we're going to lose one of our Durant. So to make sure that that doesn't happen, we have Mew. And this Mew has its ability, Memories of Dawn, allowing us to copy the attacks of any of our benched basic Pokemon, as long as we have the required energy for those attacks. So instead of Durant getting knocked out, we can get this Mew knocked out, and we'll still have all 4 Durant in play, able to use Devour every single turn. Those are the only Pokemon that we have in the deck. As you can see, we have lots of 4 counts of cards, as well as 2s and 3s, but mostly 4 counts of cards to be as consistent as possible. So we have our 4 Nest Ball and Level Ball. That's going to allow us to search out our Pokemon, either putting them straight onto the bench since we don't have any Pokemon we need in our hand, as well as Level Ball being a free search card for our Pokemon, meaning that we don't have to discard anything from our hand. So this is 2 excellent ways to search out our Pokemon, as well as we have our utility cards here, such as Counter Capture. This is going to allow us to bring up a Pokemon on our opponent's side, and since we're always going to be behind on prizes, since we're not taking any prizes, this is a great use of trying to stall our opponent, force them to have extra resources, since we don't play any Lysander, as our supporters are all about consistency and drawing the cards that we need when we need them. Moving on, we have Eco Arm as well as Lana's Fishing Rod. These are to recycle our two cards, as well as Lana's Fishing Rod getting us a Pokemon if we need it, although we have lots of other recovery cards for our Pokemon. So these are mostly for our tool cards, and if we have a look at our tools, the main one that we're focused on is Life Dew. This is an ace spec, so we can only run one of them, hence why we have so much recovery, and this makes it so that our opponent takes 1 less prize card. So if they're taking 1 prize card on Durant or Mew, and we make them take 1 less, that means they're taking 0 prize cards. So if we're able to recycle this multiple times, and we have 4 total ways to recycle it, that means we can make use of Life Dew 5 times. That's going to give us those extra turns that we need in order to have the most amount of potential for discarding cards off of our opponent's deck, because that's really what you're looking for here, is maximum amount of turns and time playing in the match so that you can discard as many cards as possible. Along those same lines, we have a copy of Cursed Shovel, just the one, since we have so much recovery for our tool cards, especially with those Eco Arms, and this is just for those turns where you don't have Life Dew down. Then you can put Cursed Shovel on your Pokemon, and when it gets knocked out, you're going to get an extra 2 cards discarded from your opponent's deck. Along with those, we also have a bunch of ways to recover our Pokemon. As I mentioned, we have Rescue Stretcher, so we can either shuffle Pokemon in to our deck, or we can put 1 straight to the hand, as well as 4 copies of Revive. getting us our Pokemon from the discard straight onto the bench. And this is great if we're putting our Mew in the active the way that the deck intends to work, because when that Mew gets knocked out, we can promote our next Mew, use Revive, and recover that Mew that was just knocked out. As for our other consistency, we have 4 Trainer's Mail just to find our items as quickly as possible, since there's a lot of items in this deck, as well as Trick Shovel, discarding the top card of our opponent's deck again, another crucial component of this deck and another way to discard energy or supporter cards, anything useful that they might have, just as an extra means of discard. Then we also have our Professor's Letter, our 4 count of Mount Coronet. This is great for just countering opponent's stadiums as well as recovering energy, getting it back into the hand rather than relying on something like a energy retrieval or something to shuffle into the deck. This is just going to stick and be in play for the majority of the game, since we have 4 of them, and since we're going to be discarding cards from our opponent's deck, we're likely going to be discarding some of their stadiums, so this often stays in play for the majority of the match. We also have 4 copies of energy, since we don't need a huge amount with the recovery that we have and our 1 attack cost. And then we have 3 copies of Cynthia and Sycamore for our draw, as well as a Teammates and 2 Gladian. Gladian is important for when you prize Durant, because if you don't have all of your Durant available in your deck, you're not going to be able to discard the maximum amount of cards that you can. So you're going to want to focus on getting Gladion when one of your Durant is prized, and getting that into your hand so that you can make use of it. As well as Teammates here, this is going to be good for getting out specific cards that you need after a knockout. If you really need to find your life dew or a way to recover a Pokemon, this is going to do that for you. As well as our Thirsty Seeker, so that we can get one of those supporters that we need, or if we just don't happen to get into a supporter, we can make use of this. So this is a very simplified and consistent version of the deck. That's really what I've tried to focus on here, and if you have any suggestions for it at all, then be sure to leave it in the comments section, because I would very much like to have a lot of other cards in this deck, but I find it often just clogs it up so that you're not getting the cards that you want. For example, I had Mr. Mime in here many times so that you could block that bench damage, so if you come up against spread decks, that's going to help you out. Or things like Enhanced Hammer, Crushing Hammer, those just don't help your consistency. So this deck is all about being aggressive with your discarding. So I hope you liked the video, and let's get into some battles. Alright, let's get into our first game here. We've been able to win the coin flip, and we're going to choose to go second, because that's going to allow us to play our supporter as well as use Devour. It's very easy to get all of your Durant into play on the first turn of the game when you're going second like this, and typically you don't really care about what it is that your opponent is playing, as you're always got the same game plan every single match. You just want to get set up and use Devour constantly, turn after turn, wearing away at your opponent's deck until they have 0 cards left. Now we are up against a Jirachi and Blacephalon deck. That Blacephalon is going to require 3 energy on it, but that's quite easy with the attachment and also a welder. But it's the resource management that they're really going to struggle with once we start going through their deck. Now, in order to knock out our Pokemon with the likes of Mew and Durant, they're only going to need to discard 1 energy with the Blacephalon, as Mew only has 50 HP unfortunately, and of course Durant is weak to fire. At least we do have a reasonable hand here. We have at least 1 Nest Ball and also a Professor Sycamore. The Sycamores are great in this deck, as you often play out your hand of the item cards, and when you play all of your item cards and you go down to quite a low hand size, then you can just use Sycamore to draw up the full 7 cards. We do also have the Cynthia as an option, as we can shuffle our cards into our deck if we do have a lot of resources that we want to protect and keep in play in our deck. Then we're going to want to use Cynthia over the Sycamore. And of course you can always use N as an option, because that's going to limit your opponent's hand size and what it is they're capable of pulling off, but I found if your opponent builds up a large hand size and you use N to put them down to say a 3 or 2 card hand, then that's just putting cards back into their deck, and you really don't want to do that. You want to be discarding cards from their deck and not helping them maintain it. So we are going to go with the Cynthia here, since we did have quite a few cards in our hand that I would like to protect. Unfortunately, we've drawn back into the Rescue Stretcher, which is one of those cards, as well as not being able to get an energy is going to be rather irritating here, but we get the Trick Shuffle to discard 1, and that's going to be our first card discarded of the match. It's going to be on my opponent here to get an escape board or switch onto this Durant so that they can start attacking with the Blacephalon, also looking to find a welder on their side so that they can attach some extra energy. And we see a Stellar Wish to get that giant hearth that's going to be able to find them those energy out of the deck, as well as a Primate Wisdom, switching the top card of their deck with the one that's in their hand. Of course, they're going to want to be doing that throughout their turn and potentially shuffling up their deck, because if they put a card on the top of their deck that they want to keep, then we're going to have the potential of discarding that. Looks like my opponent doesn't have the welder though, just an attachment and blazer, but they don't hit the fire energy, and that's going to be good for us since we can start discarding these cards. It looks like we are going to lose the Rescue Stretcher, but I really want to find this energy here, and I don't think Cynthia's going to cut it, so we just discard our hand, and we do get the energy as well as a couple of level ball, and that's going to allow us to search out our Mew, as I was mentioning, keeping those Mew in play as much as possible rather than the Durant. It's going to be very crucial to keeping our Durant alive and discarding as many cards. Also playing out this Professor's Letter just to thin the energy from our deck, since we don't really need it in there at the moment. And we'll also play the Trainer's Mail, try and search for something useful like Life Dew or even Cursed Shovel, or kind of any recovery really, but we don't get too much going on here, so we'll just take the Nest Ball just to have it. There's not really many other options in there that we're good. And we have the Devourer for 4. So my opponent draws a card. All they need here is 2 energy cards, and we know that they have Giant Hearth in their hand, so that's not going to be an issue for them whatsoever. We can take a look at their discard pile as well to see what we discarded. They're playing the Scoop Up Net and also the Switches. So it looks like a fairly standard deck, standard format anyway, that my opponent is playing in Expanded, which is fair enough. You do see that quite often, I found, in Expanded format. But we see a welder from them as well, that's going to help them out. Really, we don't need anything at this point since we have our board set up with our Ents, and all we need to do is attach to a Mew and we can Cynthia. We could use this Rescue Stretcher to recover the 1 Durant, but I'd much rather save it for a more crucial time, and hopefully we can draw into a revive, and that's exactly what we top deck here, so getting very lucky with our draws. We can Cynthia here, looking for a Life Dew if possible. Not actually searched, so it could be prized. Probably should search that at some point. But we have the Trainer's Mail here. We can take this level ball. The level balls and nest balls are also good for if you Rescue Stretcher multiple Pokemon back into the deck. It looks like we've prized our Life Dew as well as the Cursed Shovel. So we're going to look to use Gladian on the following turn here, so that we can at least get Life Dew. But we can Devour again. That's going to discard another 4 cards from our opponent's deck, going down to 21 cards. If you are new to the game, you can look at the top corner where your opponent's profile and name is placed, and those numbers indicate the amount of cards that's in your opponent's deck. That top number is going to be the amount of cards in their deck. So you're going to want to keep an eye on that, and that's going to allow you to track what's going on, as well as being mindful of what's in your opponent's discard pile. It's going to be good for keeping a track of what resources they have. We do have the Mint Coronet here, so we can use this to recover some of our energy at least, keeping that in play and in the deck as much as possible. And as I mentioned, I'll use the Gladian so that we can take a life do here. And we're going to immediately attach that because we don't want our opponent taking too many more prizes. We do also have the Lana's Fishing Rod so that the following turn, when this Mew inevitably gets knocked out, we can use the Fishing Rod to recover both the Mew and the Fishing Rod, as well as using our Sycamore to draw into a better hand. My opponent did replace the Stadium with the Giant Hearth, but as mentioned, they're not going to be taking any prize cards here from that knockout, and we can Lana's Fishing Rod here to shuffle in the Mew as well as the Life Dew. We do have the Nest Ball in hand, and since we're going to be discarding this hand with Sycamore, it seems reasonable to just use the Lana's Fishing Rod once again. Shuffling in the Mew and using the Nest Ball to get that back into play. We could always have went for Cynthia here, but I want to be getting some aggressive discarding in and finding the likes of Trick Shovel as well as the Eco Arm so that we can make use of Life Dew once again when that becomes available to us. We have a Level Ball here that can make use of another Mew from the deck, get that onto our bench, and we shall go for another Devourer. So that's a total of 12 cards that we've discarded. Our opponent is down to 10 cards remaining in their deck. We're getting very close to being able to win this game. My opponent has to take another 4 prize cards, so even if we can find Life Dew another couple of times, that's going to give us enough time in order to discard the rest of my opponent's deck. They're really looking to not play too many cards. It looks like they're just drawing and attacking and just focusing on trying to maintain their hand size and maintain the deck as much as they possibly can. And we see a concede from our opponent. They know what's inevitably going to happen, and that's a very good match showing off the deck. Let's get into another one. Getting into our last match here, my opponent wins the coin flip and chooses to go first once again. We start off with a perfectly fine hand here. We have 2 ways to search out Pokemon as well as a selection of supporter cards, so we can make use of Gladian if we need to here. Looks like my opponent has a Rattata, as well as we see the Pokemon Communication. They're picking in a Rattata. It'll be interesting to see what they take out of the deck here. We see the Spinarak, so this is going to be the Raticate deck, which uses Poison to knock us out after putting our HP down to 10 remaining. The Sleep from the Hypnotoxic Laser could have been an issue there, but luckily we're able to wake up. And my opponent says that we have a great deck, which is very nice of them. We're just going to play out our hand here, make use of these Nest and Level Balls to search out Pokemon, as well as play Cynthia. Since we have all of our Durant in deck, we don't particularly need to use Gladian right now, so Cynthia is definitely the preferred option. We get into a Trainer's Mail. It's going to allow us to get into another item card here, which is Level Ball, and that's going to get us our 4th Durant. Then we can use Devourer for its full potential here and discard the top 4 cards of my opponent's deck. So very strong start from our Durant deck, and definitely the preferred start that you want to be getting. My opponent does have the Eradicate in hand as well as a computer search, so that's going to allow them to search out any card from their deck. Be interesting to see what they choose. Looks like they got the Energy, as they had the Professor Sycamore in hand. Drawing cards is definitely good for us. They wanted to get that Ariados, as well as potentially looking for another Rattata to put onto their bench. Also playing Parallel City. It's very irritating to play against for me, but it's totally fine since we have plenty of stadiums in the deck to make use of. So I don't actually know what happened here. My opponent doesn't have enough energy. They only have double colorless, so that they can discard Pokemon Tool card, but we didn't have any attached. That's good for us. Let's just see here. I think attaching this energy, keeping this hand potentially so that we can make use of teammates the following turn, as we don't really need to do too much here. There's not really any pressure from my opponent to ensure that we're finding our recovery cards, so making use of our supporters as much as possible and holding on to this hand is going to really benefit us. We see that Ultra Ball from our opponent, they're getting the break, so they're playing what is essentially a stage 2 deck rather than using the triple acceleration energy, which they could use to use Super Fang on the Raticate. But we see another Professor Sycamore from our opponent. That's going to draw them another 7 cards, as well as searching out a Rattata, which they choose not to put in play for whatever reason. And we also see the Super Fang taking us down to 10 HP, and since we were already poisoned, that's going to knock us out from the poison. So we get the Alana's Fishing Rod here. One of the irritating things about Super Fang and Poison is that we can't actually make use of our teammates, unfortunately. And drawing into the Alana's Fishing Rod was not the best card, since we do have that Professor Sycamore that we will be looking to use now. But we can at least shuffle in a Durant, and we will have to discard the Eco Arm. We get our Durant, which is great, and we do have the Mint Coronet in play, so we can get our energy back. Put that into play if we so choose. Also, the Counter Catcher here is going to be good for bringing up this Ariados. It's going to stall them out and force them to have the energy to retreat. And we shall attach this Cursed Shovel. Also using Devour to drop, discard another 4 cards from my opponent's deck, putting them down to 15 cards remaining. We have a look at Cursed Shovel. It also only triggers when it's damage from my opponent's attack, so unfortunately when we're knocked out from poison it's not going to be able to take effect. But you still want to be attaching it, as if my opponent uses some sort of shuffle draw like Marnie or N, then you would much prefer to not have the Cursed Shovel in your hand, because you don't want it clogging up your deck when it's not actually a useful card in this particular matchup. So we just see another Super Fang and Poison combo from my opponent, taking the knockout on us. I do believe that the Life Dew also has the same effect, where it's only useful if you are knocked out from damage from our opponent's attack. So unfortunately that's not going to be useful this match either. But we do have the energy as well as revive, so we're just looking for more ways to recover our Pokemon here with Gladion. So we're probably just going to go with the Rescue Stretcher here. Revive was also an option, but I'd much rather have the versatility of Rescue Stretcher in case we want to shuffle in more than just getting the one Durant back into our hand. So we discarded another 4 cards from my opponent's deck, but now down to 10. They're really on the clock here to take 4 prizes, because that's going to be 4 turns, or 3 turns after this one, that we can use Devour. My opponent is saying well played to us, so maybe they see the writing on the wall that there's not going to be too many ways for them to win this match, but only time will tell. We get the Versus Seeker, but I don't believe there's too much useful in here. Teammates we can't make use of. We already have Cynthia and Sycamore. The only one that would be useful really is Gladion. We do have the Rescue Stretcher, so I'm going to make use of that, as well as play out this Sycamore, since we don't need any of these cards in our hand, and we just want to be drawing into recovery cards like that Lana's fishing rod, and also this trick shovel is going to be great for discarding another card. Getting rid of Guzma can be good. And we shall devour once again, putting our opponent down to 5 cards. With this draw they're going to be on 4, and we're going to look to win the match in our following turn, being a nice clean match, discarding all of our opponent's cards from their deck. The issue with my opponent's deck is of course that they don't really have any variance in their strategy, just like us to be fair. They're just set on using Super Fang and Poison every single turn, but it does look like they are also playing Cynthia, and that allowed them to shuffle in some cards back into their deck. They do have 9 cards left in their deck, so it's entirely possible that we get enough Devours off in order to win here. It's just going to be a case of who can win the game first, but also since my opponent is poisoned, that poison damage is ticking away and they could be knocked out very soon. We're going to play out all of our options here, taking this energy so that we can attach it, as well as making use of Lana's fishing rod to shuffle some cards back in. We're forced to put the tool in, but that's fine because we want to get that Durant back into our deck, and using Sycamore here to draw into that. Getting down all of our Durant, and we also draw into the Counter Catcher, but I'm going to keep the Eradicate in play. As I say, it is poisoned, so it's going to be knocked out eventually. And we just Devour here once again. My opponent's going down to 4 cards. We'll have to see if they have Cynthia again this turn. We can have a look at this Eradicate Break. It does have 110 HP, so it might be a little bit off of getting knocked out by its own poison. But my opponent does have the Versus Seeker for Cynthia. That's going to allow them to shuffle their hand back into their deck. Going down to 5 cards remaining. Now my opponent is going to take a prize here, and it's really going to come down to the wire in terms of who's going to be able to win this match. If we take a look at their discard pile, see how much energy they have remaining. They have 3 in there, so they do have quite a bit of energy at their disposal. I think we still go for this custom catcher anyway, in the hopes that my opponent doesn't have the energy to retreat, although they most likely will. We do have the revive to get our Durant back. Might as well put this Life Dew onto our Mew, and we can use that Bound Coronet in order to recover our energy and use Devour. Once again, discarding 4 cards, putting them down to 1 card remaining. They do draw that card, but if they're able to get an attack off, then they will be able to win the game, unfortunately. So it looks like the Life Dew actually paid off for us, as my opponent wasn't able to take a prize card, and we can actually just don't even have to do anything, we can pass. My opponent doesn't have any cards left in deck, and we get the victory. It was a very close game, but we'll take those wins even if they're slim and close like that. So it was a great game there, as well as the first match that we played. If you enjoyed the video at any point or like playing the deck, be sure to give me a like down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.